Welcome, everyone. I'm Gabriella Taylor, and I am thrilled once again to have Jules Shore with us. Not only is Jules just a stellar human being, she is also extraordinarily gifted as a therapist and a clinician. And do you identify as a neuroscientist, Jules?
No, I would say I study neurobiology deeply and I'm a teacher of neurobiology. The neuroscientists do the research and I'll leave that to them.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Jules has been my teacher for a number of years now. I continue to work with her and am in her cohorts. And she's also the author of, to be honest, it's a game-changing book around boundaries, setting boundaries
Hmm.
that stick. And the way that you break down this nebulous concept of what are boundaries, how do I know where boundaries live in me? The way you break it down is just the best that I've ever seen. So
Oh my
thank
gosh.
you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this. Oh my gosh. Yay, we're here.
So we there are multiple inroads to various conversations that Jules and I have been in ongoing development and exploration of how can we debunk some of the dispel some of the myths that are out there about healing and
Mhm.
transformation and also offer practical tools and understanding of what's happening in here because often when there is that understanding we have more choice and agency
Yes.
and ability to help ourselves and help others.
Hmm.
So we discovered today what we wanted to devote this conversation to is really understanding and this is how I'll identify it and share how you hold it, Jules.
Hmm.
But if where a lot of my work is looking at how has this thing that we call the patriarchy, that historians suggest has been present primarily in the Western world for the past 6,000, give or take, years, and
Hmm.
how we shifted from a more, if we were to use some polyvagal language, we shifted from more of a ventrally regulated uh, people that where there was a sense of belonging and connection and more or less enough for all into a power over power under hierarchical way of being that started teaching us to be scared that there wasn't enough for all and that we needed to comply with those that had the power over because if if we went out of line and didn't comply, we would get in trouble. And history has shown us that part of this thing, the power over, power under paradigm, inherent to that is the erosion of the feminine, feminine power, feminine energy and qualities. Feminine, a lot of, to me, when I think of the feminine, is that which makes us most human. Our compassion, caring, our ability to collaborate and be open and curious. And so when we look at how our brains and nervous systems have been shaped over thousands of years, by this predominant worldview and also very lived experience of danger and harm, how does that live in us today? And
Hmm.
one of the theses of my work, which we're going to unpack here, is what if the greatest obstacle to women's power isn't the world around us, the policies, the things that are being enacted by other authorities? What if the greatest obstacle to power is within, meaning the
Hmm.
very way we have internalized sexism, misogyny, and these adaptive responses to this thing that we call the patriarchy that's taught us to be scared and to assume that we're going to go without.
Hmm.
So, Jules, this is
Yes.
so rich. And we're at a time that I know I'm really exploring, and I know you do too. Where do we go from here? How do we find our way to reshape our
Hmm.
brains individually and collectively and our nervous systems into a place of belonging and safety?
Hmm. Yeah, well, that's a huge question.
Right?
We
Sounds
will have
like
to have many
pretty rich.
conversations. Right? Um, well, first I just want to stand on the step of reality with you
Mm,
and be embodied in that. In, oh gosh, we're looking at thousands of years
mhm,
of shaping culture, of shaping nervous systems.
mhm,
And so there's probably very little way at this point. I never say no way because that would be too Black and white thinking for me. I don't tend to go there. But very little way that all of us don't have misogyny in us.
Mm. Say more about that. How do you see that?
Well, I don't think we can grow up in a, a landscape where most people around are walking on a psychological floor
Mm.
that knows on this stuff planet on this stuff on this planet stuff falls down, like gravity, right? So you take a pin and on this stuff on this planet I drop the pin and it falls, right? Okay, so your psychological floor knows that. If you see me holding up a cell phone and then I go, I'm gonna drop it, right? Oh, so your eyes got big right there. Like, you don't have to think the thought, but Jules, gravity is real. And therefore, if you drop the phone, and I've done that before, by the way, the screen is probably going to break, and then you're going to have to go to the store and get a new screen, and all those, everything in anyone who's listening to me right now is everything you know about accidents just got pulled from your psychological floor, everything you know about gravity just got pulled from your psychological floor, everything about uh, making mistakes.
Mhm.
What happens when people make mistakes? Oh, is Jules going to get in trouble if she drops the phone? I don't have a phone handy or I'd drop it just so we would see what happened,
Mm.
right? So that is part of your psychological floor. Well,
So,
there's
so
an,
the way I just to break it
yeah,
down,
yeah,
so what I'm hearing you say, and for those that are listening, our psychological floor is this incredible reservoir of memory that
yes,
has been imprinted with our own lived experiences
right,
that have shaped our assumptions. So,
right,
assumptions and our knowings.
right,
Every day we're
exactly,
walking around assuming, oh no, if that person raises their voice, I'm in trouble. Or
right,
assuming that if I drop the phone, it's going to break because that's happened before. Or
right.
assuming that if I eat that, I'm going to gain weight and people won't love me because I'm supposed to look a certain way. So
All
all
psychological floor.
we're walking around.
100%.
Awesome.
And
Thank
and the reason I call it a psychological floor, which is a metaphor, there's no actual floor in your brain.
you.
I always want to be very clear. I like to be neurobiologically clear. There's no actual floor in your brain, but you
Really? I
do
thought there's
have,
linoleum in here. No?
no, definitely no linoleum, but you do have a web of implicit memory system that you walk on top of every day of your life, and it is as real to you as the floor is.
Mhm,
It is as unthought of as the floor is.
mhm,
It
mhm,
is as unchangeable
mhm,
as the floor is. So here you are walking on your psychological floor all the time, right? And I say unchangeable. It is actually changeable, which we can talk about if you want to. And I think ultimately, even a series of conversations we'll be talking about how do we change our psychological floor? Because I think that's really the journey.
Yes.
But it
And
feels unchangeable. It
and
feels
let's just
like,
give that for a second, that there is a process called memory reconsolidation, which is
uh-huh.
important brain that lets us change it. And we're going to
Oh
get to that.
yes.
This is a
Oh,
magic.
we're gonna get there and why that's so important and how even. But I think just as a beginning point to stand with you in this reality that
Mhm,
there's no way that I grow up with 6,000 years of people believing that women are less than
mhm,
and not know in my psychological floor that the feminine is less than.
I
I
just get body chills when you
I
say that.
can't not know it. Who who amongst us, my I'm married to the sweet man. He is a feminist.
Mhm,
He really wants there to be a woman president so bad. He's like, we need women leadership. These men are messing stuff up. Like, and of course, he has misogyny in him. He grew up here in this time.
mhm. Yes.
Of course, I have misogyny in me.
Yeah.
So before we jumped on, we were talking about, oh, what was stirring in me was all this wisdom from Black leaders, Prentice Hemphill, Adrienne Maree Brown,
Mm,
um, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde. There are all these folks that I was thinking of who talk about um, uh, decolonizing uh, our minds is part of breaking down colonial thinking out there.
Mhm. Mm,
And I was thinking about that and thinking about how aren't you talking about exactly the same thing
mm.
and towards misogyny? Do we
Yeah.
need to demisogynize? I don't know if that's a word. I think I might have just made it up. But
Go with it. I love it.
do we need to demisogynize our psychological floors in order to be able to approach the world in a way where we could make the change we want to see?
And help people understand, are we demisogynizing our mind? Are we demisogynizing our brain? And how they
Mm.
both relate to each other.
Oh gosh, both. Yeah. So I think of, oh gosh, well, I think now we're going to get a little wiggly. I don't think of the self as only existing inside of me.
Mm. Yeah, wiggle girl. Wiggle.
Okay, I'm going to be wiggly. I think actually for our species, we are an interdependent species.
Mhm.
And part of living into the reality of that existence is that self is co-created
Mm.
between me and in my experience of being, and because I'm an open, dynamic, complex system inside of the interactions I have with all of you too.
Mm. Open, complex, dynamic system, like birds
Like
flying.
bird flocking, so open, dynamic, complex systems. I'll list some:
Mhm.
beehives, ant hills,
Mhm.
waves, weather patterns, um, bird flocks, your
And
brain.
okay. Yes, yes.
We are also human systems are open dynamic complex systems. So a community group is an open dynamic complex system. An individual human is also an open dynamic complex system.
It's a
And
community.
because of that, I don't think the self is only created in isolation. I think the self is created, oh, inside of relationship and
Mm.
inside of my relationship with me.
Mm.
So it's
Beautiful.
both and.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Okay, so now we take that idea and we go, okay, so what is the brain and what is the mind? And I say the brain is the instrument of energy and information flow. And I say
Mhm.
the mind
Mm.
is how the energy and information flow from that instrument is utilized to create a bridge between me and you so that we both coexist and create each other in this co-creation process of self as we move through time.
Okay, that felt deeply profound.
I don't know if it was or not, but it is how I see it.
Felt profound to me. I
Yeah,
love that description of the what is happening here in
right.
every moment of being here together, here with whomever, here individually in our own private space.
Right. Because I have a my self's relationship with me. Like, I have a mind that can watch myself thinking. I have a mind that can watch myself have a sensation and then have a feeling that's related to that sensation, and then a meaning that's created out of the dance between that feeling and sensation.
Mhm. Yes.
That's a
Yeah.
deep relationship that's a multi-level layered relationship with myself.
Yes.
And
Rich.
my mind is utilizing my brain to create that and then share that with you, and then you're going to say something and that's going to change me too because we're an open dynamic complex system.
And how does internalized misogyny
Mm.
shape this dance that's happening,
Oh
inside
gosh.
and between
Hmm.
in our daily lived experience, both individually and collectively, that I believe we're being invited and asked to really look at? How does this
Mm.
misogynistic, uh, it's not even a narrative, but a way of being, how does it
Oh,
live?
it's emotional knowings.
How are we keeping it alive, and how perhaps the deconstructing of that will support
Hmm.
the reconstructing of a new way of being with
Right,
ourselves.
let's watch it in real time. Okay, so you just said that felt profound, and then what did I say? I pushed that away. Why?
Why?
Why? Why? If I look at it, I notice little wiggles. ooh,
Mm.
around, oh, is it okay for me to be profound?
Mm.
If not, why not?
Yes.
Oh, is it okay for women to be is it okay for women to have original thinking? Is it okay for women to have thinking that grows out of a conversation that then lands as profound for somebody else? Is that actually all right? Like, I think internal misogyny showed up inside this conversation.
It probably has a dozen times already in both of us.
Totally.
Yes. And that is what I love naming,
Mm-hmm.
noticing, because that's, to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's where we find our power.
Yeah.
Because we become aware of that which is so, in honor of our beautiful friend and teacher, Dan Siegel, just for those of
Mm-hmm.
you that are listening and watching, his hand model. So if this is the
Mm-hmm.
brainstem, this is the subcortical brain, this is the neocortex.
Mm-hmm.
So it's our subcortical brain, which is the subconscious driver of our lived experience
Mm-hmm.
that we're largely unaware of. And by making things conscious, i.e., Jules just having a
Mm-hmm.
moment of, oh, internal misogyny just had me kind of back up when
Mm-hmm.
Gabriella suggested I was profound. So by us teasing it out and you naming it, you
Mm-hmm.
have a bit more, if I'm understanding, you have a bit more conscious awareness of
Yes.
that which is stored in your subconscious, i.e., subcortical network.
Which
That's
is where that psychological floor is.
yes. The
So as
the
soon
psychological floor is downstairs, downstairs brain, upstairs brain,
downstairs,
the downstairs brain.
downstairs brain. Yeah. So the subconscious brain holds that implicit psychological floor with all of these emotional knowings.
Yes.
And the emotional knowings aren't even worded. Like I'm saying, is it okay for a woman to be profound? And the top part of my brain goes, of course it is. And the bottom part of my brain goes, oh, but doesn't have words. It just goes, oh,
Yes. Yes.
right? And there's
Listen
a
to those airplanes.
danger edge in it, and there's a watch out. There's even images coming up that
Mm,
have nothing to do with anything in my lived experience, but like witch burnings just came up in my mind,
mm, mm,
and
mm,
like powerful women being beheaded just came up in my mind. Like I'm like, whoa, wait a second, that's interesting. So I'm watching like, oh, my brain is carrying, all of this ancestral history, and that could be some through the implicit memory system in connection to ancestors, but also just all this learning I have.
mm.
Like,
Yes.
how many times have we studied in college and in high school and in elementary school
Mhm,
persecution of women who speak up?
mhm. Yes.
Oh my gosh, the danger is not unreal, right? And so I'm just noticing, like, oh, my body carries an edge in it of like, oh, it's dangerous to use your voice. Here I am anyway, talking to you on a podcast. So that's fun. There's always an edge of like, boo, 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 right? But I'm sitting here going, oh well, in order to potentially create a space where a reconsolidation of some of these learnings is possible. It's not absolutely necessary, but it sure does help to have a
Mm,
conscious connection from your top upstairs brain
mhm,
to the psychological floor
mm,
in the lower brain.
mm,
It sure does help. It's not
mhm,
absolutely necessary. Reconsolidation happens without conscious awareness all the time. Look at the astronauts.
mhm,
Anything that is learned can be unlearned.
mhm.
Did you all know that an
Love
interesting
this. I love this.
phenomenon, there's an interesting thing that's happened. We have astronauts now that go up and hang out on the international space stations, right? And an astronaut goes up there. Are there more than one now or just the one? The astronaut goes up there, spends a lot of time, and you know what happens? They forget about gravity. And then they unlearn gravity. They literally don't believe in it anymore because they've had so many experiences of letting something go, expecting it to fall, and then it didn't fall,
Mhm.
that their lower brain went, oh, got it. Gravity is no longer a thing. I will update that file. No problem. Then they come back down to Earth and drop water glasses in midair all the time. They put down their pen and it falls on the floor. They're like, wait, what happened?
Mm,
Right? because they have to relearn gravity. So anything, if an astronaut can unlearn gravity when in the right circumstance, what I would tell you is that anything that is learned can be unlearned.
And as it relates to the internalization of misogyny,
Hmm.
some of the things that perhaps collectively we have
Hmm.
learned in a world that tells us that women's lives, women's bodies,
Hmm.
women's roles are here to serve other, that we
Hmm.
a right to take care of ourselves, to get paid the same amount of money, to speak up, to speak our
Hmm.
mind, to risk rocking the boat or upsetting others.
Hmm.
So there are all of these learnings in the mass psychological floor of the feminine. I think of the Western feminine because it's different in other parts of the world, but the Western
Hmm.
feminine. So there's a collective unlearning
Hmm.
these misogynistic adaptive responses
Hmm.
and walk us through what what um what do you see is one of is there a thing that you have seen in particularly that really helps women become aware of how this is playing out inside of them?
Yeah,
You've had a ton of female clients over the years
I
as a
have.
yeah, I
I
mean,
have.
have you noticed, is there something in particular that you notice is a doorway that most women walk
Hmm.
to this
Hmm.
reshaping of internalized misogyny, both in the
Yeah.
body and the mind?
Yep. I think three things.
Mm,
I think one is community who is
mm,
willing to speak the unspoken.
mhm.
So
Such as,
do you have
mhm,
a friend?
mhm,
Do you have a small group of girlfriends? Do you
mhm,
have a learning group, a reading group, a church group, a community group
mhm,
who is willing to name, oh, wait, y'all, is that misogyny that just happened? Oh,
mhm,
is that internalized misogyny in me that just showed up?
mhm.
So I think one is a community to name what's been unnamed.
Beautiful.
And whether that's in a therapist, I'm a therapist, so it happens a lot inside my spaces because I'm one of those humans who's willing to name what's been unnamed.
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes I'm the community for somebody. But I think I've also seen it be really helpful way beyond the therapist's office. Do you have
Mhm,
a friend, a
mhm,
space
mhm,
where you can go and that internalized misogyny will be named repeatedly between you as part of your community?
mhm.
That's
To
one
become aware of it. I mean, this is why
thing.
I do my 4-month mastermind cohorts. This is why
Hmm.
I lead women's salons.
Hmm.
So it's named that we have to repair the bonds amongst women
Yeah,
and create that sense of safety amongst women so we can do this work together and look at how is this showing up in me in relation to you as a sister, you know,
hmm,
and how it may be showing up in relationship to our kids, our loved ones, our partners, our
hmm.
parents, our bosses, our colleagues, I mean, really the world around us. So I love
Totally.
it. Number one, the power of community that
Hmm.
can name the thing that we are all unhooking from as it
Hmm.
relates to misogyny. Gorgeous.
Yep. That's thing one. Thing two is a creation of practices, and I think they're individual for different people because I think for some people it sits as no boundaries or only rigidity and boundaries. Or for other people, it might sit in more like self-care and self-neglect
Mhm,
spaces.
mhm,
And for other people, it might sit in more like a self-loathing or undermining,
mhm, mhm.
internal undermining kind of space.
Would self-doubt fit into that?
Self-doubt, yeah, totally.
Oh,
Self-doubt is
second guess.
imposter. I'm an
Yeah,
imposter
all
for
that
being
stuff.
this or knowing what I know. Um, I think misogyny sits, like you said, kind of spread out through the psychological floor in so many pockets. We want to create practices
Mhm, mhm.
where you embody doing something not misogynistic towards yourself.
Okay, let's break that down.
Mhm.
So in this, we want to become aware perhaps of how we are reenacting certain patterns of misogyny
Mm-hmm.
internally and create practices that are corrective, such
Right.
as where we may be struggling with self-neglect and self-care,
Right.
such as where we may struggle with boundaries,
Right.
such as where we may have self-doubt, self-loathing, second-guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And another area that we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about also is what does how the difference between fawning, which is
Mm-hmm.
often the go-to survival response for women more than men,
Mm-hmm.
how does that differentiate from people pleasing?
Mm-hmm.
And then what is the difference from that to genuinely being somebody that cares and wants to help and be of service to others?
Right. Right.
So these
So
four
those
areas are so rich. And we're
four
actually going to
areas.
individual. So don't worry if you heard all of these and you're like, tell me about all of them. They all live in me because they live in me. We're actually, Jules and I decided before we're going to do individual talks on all four of these. So just
Yes.
I want you to know that we're not going to leave you hanging with this.
Totally. Right now, we're giving an overview and then
Yes.
we can talk about the practices. So I would say creating a practice that does not live inside of internal misogyny, that
Mm.
challenges your own internal misogyny,
And for
right?
example, for
So,
example.
for example, I'm a self-neglector, and in this moment, I could do these 8 things for my kids, and these 4 things for my boss, and these 5 things for my husband, even though I'm exhausted and I need to go to bed. And normally, I would do at least 3 in each category.
Mm.
But right now, I'm going to go, you know what? I need to go to bed. I guess they'll take care of that without me, or we'll do it later somehow.
Mm. Mm. So
That would
really,
be that would be a moment of where I'm practicing
yes,
taking care of me.
yes.
I'm practicing self-care as an antidote
Mhm.
to my own embedded misogyny that says you don't deserve rest. You deserve to be of service to this other person right now. You need to let go of your own needs and serve the needs of others, right?
So what I'm hearing you say as practices is in a way what we can call pattern interrupts, like really being
Hmm.
aware of how does this play out and how do I create a practice that interrupts this pattern of
Correct.
me overriding my needs and overextending myself instead of going to bed.
Right. Right. So that would be like an example. And I think they have to be created for you
Yes,
individually. Like we can give you ideas, but like, what's your precise practice? Oh gosh, loves, that's so individual.
yes,
I don't know
yes,
what your practices will be, but we're going to talk about the categories of practices and what those might look like.
yes.
So I think, okay, so thing one,
Mhm. Great.
supportive community that's willing to name the unnamed. Thing two, a creation and living into practices or like you're saying pattern interrupters where we're going to try something different that's not based on my internal misogyny.
Mhm.
And then here's thing three. Thing three is an ability to be in relationship with the activations that will come when you do pattern interruption, when you do a practice. There will be an activation that probably has emotional charge, physiological charge, and carries inside of it a prediction
Mhm.
of
Mm,
what terrible thing is going to happen if
mm,
you interrupt the pattern.
mm,
An
mm,
ability to be in relationship with that will create a healing brain state where instead of trying to just get rid of the prediction, you can come into loving relationship with prediction.
and
And
so let's
it's inside that's where the reconciliation is going to happen, not because we convince ourselves from the top down to not believe that anymore. No, 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 no. Don't worry about it.
so
Come into relationship with it.
okay, this is so
Yeah, yeah.
freaking rich. I'm like jumping out of my seat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for one, when Jules says reconsolidation, what she's talking about is this phenomenon called memory reconsolidation, in which we have discovered that there are actually ways to open the neural networks that contain old emotional knowings
Mm-hmm.
that kind of tend to crystallize as core beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
core fears or core self-identities. And for the bulk of modern psychology, the idea is once a bad experience happens, it goes into a locked, fixed network. The best we can do is like do some skill building around it to mitigate the pain of when we get triggered, when the network wakes up. But
Mm-hmm.
really, what we're talking, the reconsolidation means is there's this phenomenon within the brain that when the brain has the right sequencing of cues and
Elements.
elements,
There are elements that need to be necessary. If
and
they are there, a reconsolidation will always happen.
so a reconsolidation means that the way that that belief is stored in that neural network that says, "Oh, it's scary to speak up."
Mm-hmm.
When we're able to open that network and input new information, this is, in true essence, this is what rewiring of the brain is,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the stacking pattern of the way that is it the six neurons are stacked on top of each?
Oh, no, because that's in the top part of
Okay,
the brain. That's
okay,
it. Don't worry about that.
yes, so forget that.
Forget
But
that.
there's a way to actually open the storage unit of this neural
Mm-hmm.
network that contains the encoding and the wiring of the old painful experience that created a core belief. And we can
Mm-hmm.
actually reconstructure it. So when that network closes back together, it's reconsolidated. It
Yeah.
has a different firing pattern, which
Mm-hmm.
means it lives in us differently.
Yeah.
And
Here's how I would say it if you want to understand it, like in an inner, like in a neurobiological way, is imagine a web that always had to fire the same way. And it had to fire the same way because you need to remember stuff like gravity. I don't want you relearning gravity every time you walk down a staircase, you would fall. You have to consolidate it. That's a protein process that helps synapses refire again and again in a similar enough pattern that we know the same thing. It's not a perfectly same pattern, but basically the web refires again and again and again the same way. So let's say you have a speaking up is scary because I will always be humiliated when I speak up. Okay, that web is firing. You don't even know it's firing. You don't even know you expect humiliation, but gosh, you do.
Mhm, mm, mm,
You
mhm.
expect
It's
all women actually
chances
to have humiliation, and I'm a woman, and I've seen it happen with all the women in my family. They were humiliated at every family dinner table we ever had, but none of the men were. And so women speak up equals humiliation. Whoo, that's terrible. I'm avoiding it like the plague. I
are.
never speak up again.
And the knowing may not be a conscious thought of like,
Oh
like
gosh, no.
no, no, but it might be a tension in the belly, or it might be a
Oh
feeling,
yeah,
"Oh, I want to get up and go to the bathroom while they're talking about this." Like there
totally.
could be impulses or reflexes or tightening or disappearing that are,
Yeah,
but there's something in these that's there's
totally.
something here that knows something about that.
Yeah, the words we have wrap a cloak around the knowing so we can see it a little better.
Mm, right,
But
right.
they aren't the knowing. The knowing is more like an embodied sense of the truth. You
Yes.
could say on this planet stuff falls down, but that wraps a cloak around the knowing.
Mm,
The knowing is how your body holds the truth of
mm,
gravity.
yes.
So
Yes.
we
That's
got to
right.
make a change there. So the web fires and it knows it in the embodied way. Humiliation coming, right? The
Yes.
web fires. And then you're doing a practice. And so you speak up and then nobody humiliates you or somebody even tries, but your boundary work is so good. See, there's
Ooh.
another practice that the judgment didn't humiliate you this time, even though it has at other times.
Mm.
Woohoo. And let's say that prediction was up and active. What'll happen is it skews open. It goes, wait, what? And goes and opens up. And all of the synaptic connections open to potentially new connection.
Ooh.
And that first moment of surprise opens the network every moment it's repeated after, both the old and the new.
So the old
Both
knowing,
the
if I
old
speak up,
and
I'll get
the
in
new.
trouble. The new knowing is, oh, I can speak up and I'm okay.
I'm okay even if somebody tried to get me in trouble.
Mm.
Whoa.
Mhm.
Right? Both sides. So we're not trying to change anything. We're just going, yes, of course. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Yes, of course to the old. Of course you learned that. Of course you knew that. Of course that felt true. It feels true right now. Of course it isn't true in this moment. Look at this moment. It's not happening. So it just can't be true, can it? Right? Back and forth, back and forth. As long as they're repeated, then a new knowing will come because when the network, what's called reconsolidates, i.e., the protein process ties it back in place, it has fired in a brand new pattern. And so the old web does not fire anymore, and a new web now fires in a similar kind of experience
Mhm. And this
forever.
and as somebody that has, complex PTSD, where
Mm-hmm.
I have a brain that was shaped around a
Mm-hmm.
lot of early violations,
Mm-hmm.
shock trauma, abuse, accidents, like a lot of things, as
Mm-hmm.
well as developmental trauma. And as somebody that has been very spiritually bright and aware and also very
Mm-hmm.
psychologically adept, it wasn't until I stumbled upon the phenomenon of memory reconsolidation and interpersonal
Mm-hmm.
neurobiology
Mm-hmm.
12 years ago that not only did it change my lens and my outlook of how we humans heal, but it also gave me very distinct, um, a very distinct roadmap into my own brain, into my
Mm-hmm.
own relationship with my brain's relationship with PTSD. And I
Mm-hmm.
continue. I mean, I was saying to you, I have a therapist I meet with every Saturday for 2.5 hours to do memory reconsolidation work
Yeah.
as part of my practice ongoing because
Mm-hmm.
it's so effective,
It is so effective.
powerful. And
Yeah.
so to your point number three is so part of this process is A, having the community that can name where misogyny is being enacted.
Mm-hmm.
What I said to you, what you said to me, how I felt
Mm-hmm.
about it, however that is.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, starting to become aware of, oh, what is the patterning inside? What are the things that
Mm-hmm.
I do and say? And, instead of taking care of myself, I do these 20 other things for others.
Mm-hmm.
And to start looking at how we can intentionally start creating some pattern interrupts, some new choices.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then number three is when we start implementing the pattern interrupts and new choices, chances are stuff's going to come up.
Yeah.
So how can we tolerate the intensity of the feelings that come up when we're doing the new thing?
Right. Can we come into relationship with them with kindness, with interest, with curiosity, with compassion, with wonder? How can we come into our relationship with our own activation so that we really hold ourselves in the healing brain state? Because one of the things that needs to be present for a reconsolidation to occur is something called your mismatch detectors, which for those who love the neuroscience, blah, 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 it's your hippocampus and your right prefrontal cortex, particularly ventrolateral PFC on the right side. But for those who don't care about it, blah, 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 mismatch detectors. So our mismatch detectors, oh my gosh, we need those online, but they're calorically expensive. And so if you go into stress and try to get yourself to change, they go offline really fast because you put yourself into a threat state.
So that right there, and this is something that I see, early on when I
Hmm.
started being trained in
Hmm.
facilitation and work
Hmm.
with people, that what was popular at the time was inducing stress.
Hmm.
And where we would do these, it was encounter group style, like
Hmm.
5-day immersions, where we would have to sign a waiver saying we wouldn't try to kill ourselves if things got too intense. And we'd all, I'm just thinking,
Hmm.
where we'd all
Hmm.
sleep in the same group room for 5 days and be woken up
Hmm.
at 2 a.m. with bright lights and we'd have to, I mean, it
That's
was
incredibly stressful.
so overwhelming. There was one point where we all had to take off our clothes, stand in front of the room, and have the whole group judge our bodies. I mean,
What?
the
Oh my
whole
gosh.
so meant I could
How
write
intense.
a book on all the things that do not create a brain state, a healing brain state. So
Hmm.
what I'm talking about is extreme, but our culture has this very wonky idea that the way that we heal and grow is by sort of pushing ourselves to get rid of the parts of ourselves that we don't like, to stop
Hmm.
self-sabotaging. What's the matter with you? Stop procrastinating. What's the matter with you?
Totally. I'm
Stop
going to say,
having
what's the
affairs.
matter?
What's the
I'm
matter
going to
with
have
you?
my what's the matter with you part come in and judge the crap out of all of it.
And so all of that, so there's
Yeah.
this thing that we genuinely want to change because maybe it was an adaptive response, the
Hmm.
taking care of all the kids and the husband instead of going to bed. I mean, that's one of my biggest challenges is the
Totally.
care of everybody else and forgetting
Hmm.
about myself. And
Hmm.
so that was an adaptive response that my own internalized misogyny taught me that I can wait. Other needs are more important than mine.
Hmm.
However, when I just completely lost that train of thought, Jules, where was I going with that? Oh my gosh, my
You
brain
were
just,
talking about stress states.
oh, the stress state.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
Oh,
worries.
so when we come up, so when we come in contact with the feelings that arise in that adaptive response, overgiving, the
Hmm.
overdoing for others, then if we judge ourselves and shame ourselves or condemn ourselves, we are in fact keeping it locked in. The
Yeah, you want to lock a pattern, just go ahead and judge the crap out of it.
And most of our culture, when we look at a lot of the personal development stuff out there, it
Hmm.
is overtly and covertly implying that there's something wrong with you for doing that thing. You
Hmm.
shouldn't be doing that, which
Yeah,
does not actually allow us to heal and grow and
it
transform.
doesn't. And I would say something I've noticed is overtly telling you not to judge it while naming it bad.
Mhm. Mm,
Feels like a trap to me.
mm,
I
mm,
don't know how now I'm bad for judging it. So I'm
mhm,
trying not to judge it, but I am secretly judging it. But now
mm,
I don't even have a way to greet my judgment because my judgment was shameful.
mhm. Yeah.
Oh crap. Right? So
Okay.
so so when we say, "Oh, what are these three things?" I say community, I say practices, and I
Mm,
say healing brain state,
mm.
which is going to happen if we can have a little bit of coarseness, a little bit of coarseness.
Like,
OF, like,
of course I'm
oh, of
judging.
course I learned that. Oh, of course I'm misogynistic
Yeah.
towards myself and
Yes.
other women.
Yes.
Oh, of course. Can we have a little bit of, oh, sweetie, yeah, this was systemically created, huh?
Mhm. Mhm. Mm,
A little bit of courseness, a little bit of seeing the bigger reality
mhm.
that that you didn't create all this stuff by yourself, that
Mhm.
you're sitting in a web of history and experience that
Mm,
your sweet human brain is trying to make sense of.
mm, mhm.
Like, I don't, when I actually look at the human condition, compassion is the only coherent response.
Truly. Mhm.
Oh, you sweet, open, dynamic, complex system, deeply changed by everything you're in reaction and interaction with. And in the very beginning of life, must take it all in like a sponge and believe everything as if it were totally true. And then you have to watch yourself live a life while you make mistakes and do stuff, and you know you're going to die one day.
Mhm.
Oh my
And then everyone we love is
gosh.
gonna die.
Oh my gosh.
Have mercy on us.
Compassion is the only answer, y'all.
Jules, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for continuing. And I hope this is those that are watching and learning and growing from you as well. Thank you for continuing to help me understand myself more so I
Mm.
can land in that place of not only self-understanding but self-compassion. And thank you for holding such brilliant uh a brilliant I was going to say response or approach, but it's so much more. I just really
Mm.
deeply appreciate your contribution to my life and just to this conversation at large in terms of your work and how much I benefit and how much healing you walk people through.
Oh,
It's just really gorgeous. So thank you. I just
yeah.
am blessed by our ongoing development of connection.
Oh, thank you so much.
And so for everybody here, as we wrap up for today, so Jules
Mm-hmm.
and I will be returning to
Yes, because we
explore
need to talk about all these practices.
yes,
Because
yes,
they're in a lot of different categories. There are categories of how
yeah,
this internal misogyny sits in us and our adaptations to it. So
Yes.
we gotta keep talking about the practices.
Yes. Because when we can see it, we can then
Mhm,
start we can come into
mhm.
relationship with it. It's like,
Yeah.
what was it? When we can name it, we can tame it. But
Yep.
it's more like we can actually start coming into relationship with that which has shaped us
Yeah.
with a compassionate, loving, curious lens, which to me is are the hallmarks of the divine feminine, which we
Mhm,
are awakening in all of us, men and women.
mhm,
Thank you
mhm.
for being with us today. Is there anything else that you would like to share to feel complete for now or to be complete?
Oh, huh. Wondering. Let me listen inside and see.
How people can find you and anything else just in terms of this?
Oh, I never even think about that. Oh,
We'll
if
put
you
it
want
in
to
the show
find
notes.
me, yeah,
Yep.
if you want to find me, my website and newsletter is a good way, and I do workshops
Mhm.
for people, and I do intensives one-on-one with folks who come
And
to me for 20 hours and come and
say
do
more
some
about
deep
that.
work.
Intensive
Yeah.
intensives.
Yeah, my main therapy modality at this point is intensives.
Mhm.
So people come, you can come physically to Austin, Texas, which is where I practice. You can fly in and come and see me and do an intensive, or you can do it online or a hybrid,
Mhm.
some in person and some online. But it's 20 hours and people come and we do some deep work with reconsolidation, and how to really what you want to see shifted in your life and finding ways to understand what emotional knowings are locking that thing that you want to shift but can't.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I do that and I do boundary workshops in small group.
Mhm.
It's usually 4 to 8 people who come
Mhm.
to my groups. And so lots of deep work,
Mhm. Yes.
real deep experiential work inside of a group process around boundaries. Um, and so that's, yeah, and you can find my book anywhere. Setting Boundaries That Stick is the name of it. And my website, juliannetaylorshore.com, one N, is that my name is spelled with one N. Are you ready? Here's my fun. I used to say this all the time. My name is spelled one J, one U, one L, one I, one A, one N, one E. Julianne Taylor Shore. Nobody calls me that. Everybody calls me Jules. But it is my official name is Julianne Taylor Shore. And so you can find me through my website and I have a newsletter and it says, oh, here's trainings I'm offering. Here's
Mhm.
groups that are coming up, that sort of thing. So feel free to sign up for that if you want. And what do I want to say though? I always forget to tell people about me, so thank you for reminding me.
Internal,
Um,
maybe?
yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Not assuming, just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very common for women.
Mm-hmm. I think it is. I think it is internal misogyny.
The self-promotion,
Um, self-promotion, like
right?
I think me not leaning into is internal misogyny around value and what value do we have to offer as women? And I think it's also to make yourself loud or known is potentially dangerous.
Mhm.
And so I think it is. I think it totally is.
Mm.
Um, yeah. See, this is why we need community to help us name it.
Yes,
This
yes.
is Gabriella and I are starting community right now in this moment. You all who are listening are part of this community. We are naming internalized misogyny. Name it again and name it
This
again and name it
this is
again.
why I'm building a movement of extraordinary women
Hmm.
who are truly committed to transform the landscape of how we show up as leaders in ourselves and our lives
Hmm.
from a place of authenticity and loving and connection. And it begins with naming the thing that we have been asleep to, the spell.
Hmm.
That's how we break the spell and
Totally.
we reclaim our power.
I
So I
figured
love
out what
that
I
you're,
want to say. I
oh,
figured it out. It came to me. Like as we were talking, it's like, yes, that. Your brain is wearing history colored glasses.
mm,
That is an anatomical wiring truth. I will never change it. You will never change it.
mm, mm,
That is just true. Our history colored glasses carry not just our personal histories, but everything we've learned from the systemic and ancestral history of humanity as we walk together. So you carry not just your knowings, but the knowings of the whole system.
mm.
And all of that is in your history colored glasses.
Mm.
And while we cannot take them off, because that's an anatomical wiring truth,
Mhm.
what you can do is change the color of the lenses.
Mm.
And I really hope we do.
I really hope we do. And I hear that for some, they might hear that as like, oh my God, that's so heavy, it's so intense. And it is.
And it is.
And
I
what
have
I
great hope as I say it, though.
and to me as well, because what I have found is the way that we change the color of the lens often offers us such profound access to our own loving hearts, the
Mm-hmm.
kindness of others,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the embodiment of self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that we often change the lenses is a beautiful, elegant
Mm-hmm.
way. It's not, it's almost like the hard already happened. The
Yeah.
hard of the hard of changing the lenses doesn't have to be as hard. Wait, how am I saying this? You know,
Yeah. The
like it
heart of
the
changing the
hard is over.
lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. The heart of changing the lenses is often not quite as hard as what happened to make the lenses that color in the first
Yes.
place.
And in fact, it is extraordinarily beautiful and connective
Mm-hmm.
and tender, I want to say tenderizing, but not
Yeah.
the way that that word means, but
Yeah.
incredibly humanizing in a
Humanizing and joyful. I'm a trauma specialist, and you wouldn't think this is true, but every time I've officed with anyone, they always go, Jules, for a trauma therapist, you got a lot of laughter coming out of your office. I'm like,
true,
yep, we
true.
actually have great joy when we do work
Yes.
on this.
I
So,
know my own experience because of
mhm,
my complex trauma history and complex
mhm,
PTSD energy.
mhm,
It's like the freeing of life force energy that
mhm,
was previously bound in
mhm.
the areas of historical hurt and
Yeah.
armoring. The freeing of that life force energy is so joyful and is so enlivening and is just
Mhm,
so beautiful. So
mhm.
thank you for being part of my journey, our journey. Thank you for walking on this journey with me. And I am so thrilled for our next part in this newly emerging series of undoing internalized misogyny.
I love it. I'm on this journey with you. You are so welcome. And thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone who gave us your time, your most precious resource.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So for everyone that's listening to this, I just wish to extend from my heart to yours a very sincere message of encouragement, of hope and encouragement that no matter what your history has been, no matter the forces that have defined your life up until now, they do not need to, um, they do not we are extraordinarily resilient humans that have infinite capacity to heal, to integrate, to grow. And so, no matter what your history has been, I am just offering as a living proof, but a message of encouragement that healing is possible, transformation is possible. So, thank you for being with us here.